I've tried to film this video multiple times and it's proving to be quite difficult, but I do think that putting out this information and putting out my journey and experience is important. I am hoping that this video reaches people who can relate, people who are going through their own cancer journey at the moment or have a loved one who has gone through this or is going through it currently. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And if me sharing my experience is helpful to anyone out there, then it is absolutely worth filming and talking about and putting out there. Hi, I'm Meg. Welcome to plantfitmeg. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you'll take a look around at some other videos while you're here. I usually make videos about healthy weight loss, simple plant-based recipes, and living a healthy lifestyle. Today's video obviously is going to be quite different. I wanted to talk about my cancer experience and my journey with cancer, from diagnosis through treatment, losing my hair, and a little bit about the aftermath of cancer, and I think that aspect of it is sometimes less talked about. So I wanted to delve into that a little bit. A disclaimer here, I am not a doctor. I'm also just speaking to my own experience. Every cancer patient's journey and experience with cancer is going to look different. So I just want to put that out there right up front. If you feel like there's something not quite right in your body, if you're questioning something. I also wanted to put out a little trigger warning because I will be getting into some specifics that might be a little bit too much information, a little TMI for people. So if that might make you uncomfortable, you might want to skip this video. And the other thing is I do have my box of tissues here. I'm prepared that I might get emotional during this video, so I just wanted to put those couple of warnings out there just in case those things might make you uncomfortable. But if you do want to hear about my cancer journey, then keep watching. I decided to film this video for multiple reasons. One is that it is September and it is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, so I thought the timing was good to put out a video about my ovarian cancer experience and what I went through in that process. This video has also been requested multiple times from viewers who have seen my How I Regained My Health video, or where people have seen me talk about my cancer experience a little bit in interviews or in other videos, and I've had people ask for more details and more information about what I experienced and what I went through. So I thought I would film it and put it out for those people who were asking for this video. And my biggest reason for putting out this video is to reach people who are going through a similar experience, people who are going through a cancer diagnosis or who have a loved one who is going through a cancer diagnosis, just to hear that you're not alone. I know when I was diagnosed and going through all of this, I felt very alone. And in some ways, I knew I wasn't alone. I knew there were lots of other people around me who had experienced cancer in one form or another, whether they had been diagnosed themselves or whether a loved one had been, or something of that nature. But something about being diagnosed and dealing with it and being very internal about it in a lot of ways was very isolating and had me feeling quite lonely in it. So I just want you to know that you are not alone, and I've been there. And if you want to reach out in the comments section with your own experience or your own story about cancer, I'd love to hear that and have a conversation with you about your experience and what it was like for you. So let's get into it. I do have some notes in front of me, so if I'm looking down at certain points, that's what I'm doing. But I also wanted this video to be fairly conversational and just like I'm talking to a friend and talking about my experience. So this all started back when I was 20 years old and I was in my second year of university, and life was good. Life was stressful as it is for any college student, but things were going fairly well, fairly smoothly. I was in school, I was studying, writing papers and reading and writing exams. I was working part-time. I had friends and, would go out with friends and my boyfriend, and I was just living, kind of a typical college kid life. And I went in for my routine annual appointment with my GP. And at the time, she was doing pap tests and internal exams as part of the appointment. I think typically now you would go to your gynecologist potentially for one or both of those things, but at the time I didn't have a gynecologist, and I was just going to my family physician for my annual checkup. So had the pap test done, and when the results came back weeks afterwards, it was all normal and fine. But immediately when she did the internal exam, she said that she felt something off, something was not quite right, and maybe there was something going on that needed to be checked out and looked into further. So she sent me for an ultrasound. I went and had the ultrasound done, and they found a cyst, a dermoid cyst, which is basically a collection of cells that sometimes can include really gross things like hair and teeth and stuff, and just the kind of thing that is typically in your body from when you're born, and then sometimes it just stays there and doesn't do anything, and other times it grows and can create problems. So I had this cyst on my ovary, and my doctor was kind of excited about it, which, just for the record, having your doctor be excited about anything is really off-putting and really unpleasant, and you'll see that as a running theme throughout this video, throughout my experience. But my doctor was fairly excited. She said, this is nothing to be too concerned about. Ovarian cysts are fairly common, and dermoid cysts are, somewhat common. She would see, a few a year. And she said, just put it in your 5-year plan, put it in the 5-year plan to, at some point within that 5 years, have it removed. You'll have to have it surgically removed, and that'll be that. And the chances of it being cancerous are like practically nothing because you're so young, and it's a 1 in a million chance. It's a 1% chance. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely that it would be cancerous. Put it in your 5-year plan, maybe have the surgery when you are on a break from school or when you're done school, and that's that. She basically told me not to worry, and that when I was ready to have the procedure, to contact her, and she would refer me to a surgeon, and that would all get sorted out and resolved. So I left that appointment feeling pretty good. Obviously not thrilled about having to have surgery at some point, but also, okay, put it in my 5-year plan, no biggie. I'll probably just do it when I'm done university completely, and I can just take some time after school is done and have this thing removed and then move on. My doctor also did say that if I had any issues, to contact her again and follow up with her. So I left that appointment, and about a month and a half later, I woke up in the morning with intense pain, and I couldn't pee properly. So when I would try to urinate, it would just come out in dribs and drabs, and it was just not happening. And I had so much pain and so much pressure in my pelvic region. So I talked to my mom, told her what was going on, and told her, hey, I'm gonna call the doctor and see if I need to go see her, or if I need to go to the ER, or if I need to follow up with a surgeon at this point, or what to do. And so I called the doctor, and she said, it sounds like you're gonna need to have emergency surgery. This is an urgent matter. go to the ER. So my mom took me to the ER and we waited in the ER, as you do. And my dad came and met us there. And I then saw doctor after doctor, you know, specialist after specialist. And they were doing internal exams, they were taking my history, they were doing tests, and just looking at, you know, what was going on and what they could do for me. And we had been there all day. It was an extremely long day. I was in a lot of pain. I don't even remember, you know, eating or having pain medication. I may have, but I think they wanted to hold off on that in case I was going in for surgery. So there was a bit of issue that way in terms of, you know, if I was going in for surgery, they didn't want me to be eating and stuff like that. So we've been at the hospital all day. I've been in pain. I have a lot of pressure on my bladder and I constantly feel like I need to pee and it's just not happening, and I'm incredibly uncomfortable. And I've been poked and prodded and given my history to all these different people. And I see the last doctor of the day. She says, "This is an urgent matter. You do need surgery, you do need to have this cyst removed. However, we don't have a surgeon right now who is available to do the procedure. So you're going to need to wait until tomorrow to have the procedure done." At which point I break down in tears, and we're both really frustrated, and we're re-explaining, you know, the urgency, and I'm in so much pain and I'm so uncomfortable. And, you know, we're sort of asking, is there not a surgeon on call? Is there not something else that can be done for me at this point? And, you know, she kind of is grumpy with us and, oh, I'll speak to a colleague and I'll be back. So she comes back and tells us that there is a surgeon who is willing to stay and do the procedure that evening. So my mom and I are relieved that the surgery is actually going to happen, but at the same time I'm terrified of having surgery and having to be in the hospital, and you know, it's a scary thing. So I meet the surgeon, and he was the kindest, most lovely person of that whole day, besides my parents being there and being extremely supportive and wonderful there. But he was very calm. He smiled at me. He was relaxed. He explained to me exactly what was going to happen, and that, you know, they were going to do a very small incision and no one would see it. No one would see my scar. And, you know, they would do the surgery. He was very experienced, very skilled. They would do the surgery and I would recover and be on my way. And so I felt very comfortable in his hands. At that point, my parents were reassured that I was in good hands. I had the surgery done. The ovarian cyst is removed. I stay in the hospital for, 5 days, normal sort of recovery. I go home to recover. So at this point, I am under the impression that that's the end of the chapter. That's the end of the story. It's done. The ovarian cyst is removed and I get to recover and get on with life, and that's it. That's the end of it. And little did I know that that was just the beginning. So about a month goes by and I'm recovering at home. I'm recovering pretty well and things seem to be going all right. And I receive a phone call at my boyfriend's house, and I remember Chris's mom coming into the room, holding the phone out to me and looking very confused and saying, "Hey, Megan, the phone is for you." And I was like, why am I receiving a phone call at Chris's place? So I thought, this is strange. And I get on the phone and it's my surgeon. And immediately I'm like, surgeons don't call patients. something's up, something's wrong. And so he sort of asks me if I'm sitting down, essentially. And I tell him, yeah. And he explains to me that the pathology was done, as is done with cysts and tissue removal. And they found cancer cells in the cyst. And so I have cancer. I have ovarian cancer. And I remember my heart just dropping, and at the same time just being in shock. Just complete shock. And I didn't know what to say. And it's hard for me to even recall the rest of that conversation because I was so just, what's happening? I was told this was a 1 in a million, 1%, basically 0% chance of happening. And now I have cancer. And I remember him explaining to me that he normally wouldn't call patients. He normally wouldn't, tell people over the phone. But because it was so close to Christmas and the holidays and things kind of shutting down, he wanted to tell me so that I knew what was going on before the cancer center called me and started to talk to me about moving forward with what my treatment might look like. And he wanted me to sort of be prepared for that phone call coming. So I thanked him and said goodbye. And that's how I found out that I had cancer. And I remember hanging up the phone and just bursting into tears. And meanwhile, Chris is sitting there with me and he's just confused, like what's going on? And I tell him what's happening, and I go home and I talk to my parents and explain to them what's going on. And then we start diving into research and trying to find information about cancer and about ovarian cancer specifically. And my mom is big on researching and finding information. And when my dad had gone through colorectal cancer a couple years before that, she would do the research and find the information, and she would know what the doctors were about to say before they even said it to him, because she had done all this research and kind of knew, okay, this is the protocol, like they're going to do this and then they're going to do that, and then he'll have this test and that appointment and this and that. And it was fairly clear cut. But for me, because it was so rare and so unusual for someone my age to deal with this, and for the type of cyst that I had to contain a malignancy and not just be a benign cyst, it was extremely difficult to find information and to know sort of what to expect moving forward. So then I ended up meeting with the gynecological oncology team, and it was a team of doctors who worked together. So the gynecological oncology team that I was working with, they were very fascinated by my case and very excited about my situation. And again, that's not something that you want to have happen when you're in a medical emergency or medical distress. But my case was very unusual, and so they were very excited at the prospect of basically what my perception was, that they just wanted to slice and dice. And they were quite cold. My surgeon in particular was quite cold and didn't really have that good bedside manner or anything like that. I did trust that she knew what she was doing and that she was professional and all those things, but she was not good at talking to patients and dealing with patients. I had a lot of issues with that gynecological oncology team, and basically, because my case was so unusual and so fascinating, they didn't really know what my treatment protocol was going to be, because there wasn't really a treatment protocol for my specific case. So my case actually went to a panel of doctors who had conversations, debates, discussions about my case specifically and about what should be done in my unique situation. And they consulted with doctors from other centers, other cancer centers as well, to gain more insight into what to do and what the best treatment option would be. There's a lot of back and forth about what my treatment would look like and whether my surgery would be a hysterectomy or another option, and what that would all look like. There was a lot of back and forthing and debate amongst the doctors to decide what would be the best course of action for me, with being as young as I was and wanting to preserve my fertility and things like that. There was talk of potentially freezing eggs, which I didn't end up doing, but there was a lot on the table and a lot to consider. And it was extremely overwhelming, of course, at the time. And it turned out that the best recommended treatment option that they could give to me would be to have another surgery, I'm going to mess up these technical terms, but I'm going to try to say them. So they recommended that I have another surgery, a salpingo-oophorectomy, a pelvic lymphadenectomy, and an omenectomy. So basically to have my right ovary and fallopian tube removed, to have the pelvic lymph nodes removed, and then the omentum, which is like this layer of fat that doesn't really serve a purpose, and it just covers your organs, have that removed as well, because it's common for ovarian cancer cells to migrate there. So about 2 months after the cyst removal, I had my second surgery, and I had basically just recovered from the first surgery just to go into the second surgery and have that done. So I went and had the second surgery performed. Everything seemed to go fairly smoothly. Unfortunately for this surgery, I was not able to have a bikini cut, a small incision. It was a more difficult recovery the second time around. I think partially because it was the second time around and I had literally just had pelvic surgery a couple of months before that and was having a second surgery, and also because the incision was a lot longer and there was just more removed and more happening there. So I have to say that my family was amazing. My parents and my brothers and my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, Chris, was amazing. And my parents were keeping him in the loop all this time, and he came to visit me every day. And I didn't know if he was gonna hang around. We had been together for a while when all of this happened, but I didn't know if he would be able to handle going through this with me and watching me be sick and watching me go through all of this with the potential that I could be sick moving forward, and who knows what the future would bring in terms of future illness or future issues with cancer. And he stuck by me. Let me know if you'd like a video with Chris talking about his perspective on my cancer journey and what it was like for him as my boyfriend at the time, and then now looking back on it as my husband. I spoke to him about this before filming, and he said that he'd be happy to film something like that for you guys if it's something that you're interested in. So just let me know. The other issue with my case was that the type of cancer cells that they found were very fast moving and very aggressive cancer cells. And so I was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer, and the cells were very aggressive. And so they wanted to get on the treatment as soon as possible and really, get into the treatment plan right away. So after the surgery, I recovered for a while, and then it was time to discuss and get into the next phase of my treatment, which was chemotherapy. And so it was decided that I would go through 3 cycles of chemo. So it was 3 days in a row every 4 weeks for 12 weeks. They discussed possible side effects with me about nausea and things like this. I asked about hair loss, and they said that I might have a little bit of thinning, but I won't lose my hair in this process. And I was really relieved to hear that, because I had actually buzzed my hair about a year or so before that, maybe a couple years before that, in support of a friend who was having health issues at the time. And I had just grown my hair back, and I didn't want to lose my hair because I had just had that big chop. So I started going for chemo treatments, and I have to say that the nurses, the chemo nurses, they are amazing humans. And I'll always remember them really fondly, because they treated me like a person. They treated me like more than just a cancer patient. And they would ask me about what I was up to, or what I was studying in school, or if I was reading a book while I was having my treatment, they would ask me about what I was reading. And I really appreciated that humanity, and it was something that I hadn't seen a lot of in the medical situation since my surgeon, and talking to my first surgeon and the way that he dealt with me. So it was really refreshing to have people who would talk to you about more than just medications and cancer and treatment, and saw more than just a cancer patient. So I would sit in the cancer center and be hooked up to an IV for hours, and I would sit there, reading or chatting with the nurses, chatting with my mom, sleeping in some instances, falling asleep. As most cancer patients do, I felt incredibly nauseous, incredibly tired, and just generally unwell. And on top of the chemotherapy, I was taking a lot of other medications at the same time to control the nausea and to, try to manage my appetite and my comfort level and things like this. And I remember being tired and unwell, but also suffering with insomnia and not being able to sleep properly at all, and being really antsy and really fidgety, and feeling like I had to get up and move. Like, it was almost like I was trying to escape myself in a way, and I had to just get up and go for walks. Chris would come out with me for walks, or my mom or dad would. Shortly after starting treatment, I started to notice that my hair was coming out in clumps. And this wasn't just hair thinning, I was actively losing my hair. And I was completely unprepared for it, because my medical team at the time reassured me that I wouldn't lose my hair and that it would just maybe thin a little bit, but that was it. So my mom actually used to be a hairdresser, and so she cut my hair multiple times during this process to try to salvage my hair to some degree, but really the writing was on the wall, and I ended up losing all of my hair, and then looking at purchasing wigs and hats and bandanas and just head coverings in general. It was really hard to lose my hair. It's a completely different experience to buzz your hair or cut it very short and have control over it and be able to, you know, do what you want with your hair and to have that choice for yourself. And it is a completely different experience to lose your hair and to not have that control or that say over it. And for me to be completely unprepared for it as well just added to the stress of that whole situation. And then we were scrambling for wigs and we were unprepared. And my mom was like, you know, we should have been looking for wigs weeks ago before all of this. You know, we're kind of too late with it at this point because by the time I went to have a wig fitted and was going wig shopping, my hair was just coming out in clumps. Like I couldn't touch it without just clumps of hair coming off. I would wake up in the morning and my pillowcase would be absolutely covered in hair. Like it was really difficult. So I went through chemotherapy, lost my hair, had amazing support from my family and from friends at the time. Chris shaved his head, and my mom shaved her head. She kept her bangs, but she shaved her head. And one of my other good friends at the time shaved her head as well in support of me, which was really lovely and really beautiful and made me feel less alone at the time. And, you know, I had friends visit me. I had them, you know, bring me treats and come spend time with me and hang out while I was recovering. And it was a really difficult time to just be so ill and just want to get back to normal, get back to, you know, regular life. And to go all through all of this at the age of 20 and not knowing what the future held and being afraid that the cancer would come back. Once my chemotherapy was complete, I was scheduled to have really regular follow-ups with my first surgeon, who was a gynecological surgeon but was also a gynecologist taking on new patients. So I became one of his patients, followed up with very closely, monitored very closely. I was declared cancer-free, which was amazing, but then was followed up and monitored very closely for a very long time. I believe I had scans every 3 to 6 months in the beginning. They just really wanted to keep a close eye and keep on top of things just in case another cyst cropped up or, you know, something else happened. At the time, I was really praised for being so strong and so brave and so courageous and all of these things that I just felt like I wasn't any of those things. I was just on autopilot really and just trying to cope with what was next, what was the next thing to do, and how to treat this and try to get through it with as much grace and humor as possible. And I was really praised for not crying in the office. I remember that, and for not really showing a whole lot of emotion and just kind of taking everything in and being strong, I guess, was what the way that they saw it or the way that they framed it. And I was told about support groups and that I could join in on those to kind of share what I was feeling or thinking or experiencing. And at the time, I did not want to be part of those groups. I did not want to be considered a cancer patient. I did not want to be considered even a cancer survivor after the fact. I really just wanted to get through my treatment and move on with my life and just close the chapter, forget that the chapter ever happened, just push it aside, and then get back to being a student and just being a typical, average, normal person again, and not have this cancer label hanging over my head. And I didn't feel like I would fit into support groups. All of the people in those gynecological oncology support groups and the people that I saw in gynecological oncology, you know, having appointments and having chemotherapy treatments, they were older. They were much, much older than me. And I just thought, you know, if the only thing I have in common with these people is cancer, I just don't really want to go there. And I'm not comfortable having that conversation with strangers and with people who I'm not going to relate to on any deeper level beyond just cancer. And so I chose not to join in on support groups and things like that. Looking back, I kind of wish I had taken on more and at least tried to go to a support group to see what it was like and to see if it would have been helpful or beneficial to me. I think at the time I was very much, I knew I had cancer and I knew I had to deal with it and I knew I had to go through treatment, but at the same time, at the end, it was almost like a denial, almost like a pretending that it didn't exist or just that it never happened. I wanted to sweep it under the rug and just get on with life. The other thing about being a cancer survivor that people don't really talk about is the survivor's guilt and about feeling weird about living through it and being really grateful and really happy, of course, about being a survivor. But it's not the same as the images that you see, the advertising, you know, in the cancer industry, if you want to call it that, of cancer survivors being happy and joyful and I won my battle. I certainly didn't feel that way, and I felt like people who die of cancer or people who you know, have a much more difficult time through it with longer treatments and longer bigger challenges than I had, I didn't see them as winning or losing the fight. And that language always really bothered me. And I mean, anyone who has an illness is going to do what they can to get the treatment that they need and to get healthy and to get well. And with cancer, for some reason, it turns into a whole like, oh, it's a battle and you have to fight. And if you live, you win. And if you die, you lose. And you would never say that about someone with a heart attack or heart disease or another health issue. And I find it extremely odd that that analogy is used around cancer so much. And maybe other people appreciate and like that analogy and think of themselves as, you know, powerful and strong and warriors and fighting. But I was just following the recommendation of my doctors and following the treatment plan and doing what I could to survive was the way I saw it. And so for a long time, I didn't want to talk about my cancer much. I didn't really want to admit that I was a cancer survivor or that I had been a cancer patient. And I was very uncomfortable with the whole thing. Eventually, I wanted to go on cancer walks, like I wanted to do Relay for Life, if you're familiar with that, or we did an ovarian cancer specific walk at one point. And even then, I wanted to participate in those events and do fundraising, but I didn't want to be associated with the survivors. I wanted to participate, but also like distance myself from having been through it. And I think that had to do with some survivor's guilt and just part of that whole sort of knowing that it happened, but also kind of trying to deny that it ever happened at the same time and trying to forget about it in a way. And thinking about others and honoring other people and not really thinking of my own situation very much. The other thing that I always felt compelled to do early on was that when I did hear about someone close to me who had cancer, I felt compelled to get a buzz cut. I felt compelled to shave my hair off, and whether I could donate my hair if it was long enough, or if I hadn't, you know, dyed it or messed around with it, or whether it was just to buzz my hair sort of in support of those people. And they didn't even have to be super close to me. It was just if I had heard, like, you know, a friend of a friend or a friend of a relative or, you know, things like that in the past, I've absolutely shaved my head for those purposes. And I think initially it was kind of a survivor's guilt thing. And then I was really keen to grow my hair back immediately so that no one would think I was a cancer patient or anything like that. And now I buzz my hair periodically just because I like it and I feel empowered because it's under my control and it's my decision, and I feel happy with it. I feel good with it. And right now I'm growing out my latest buzz cut. In my next video, I'm really gonna lighten things up and talk about buzz cut pros and cons. So if you wanna stay tuned for that, that would be amazing. If you have any questions about my cancer journey or my experience, leave them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to have a chat with you about my experience further or about your experience if you are dealing with cancer in some way or have dealt with it in the past. Thank you so much for watching this video. It was very personal and difficult for me to film. I tried filming it multiple times, and it's still hard to talk about all these years later, and I think it just had such a big impact on me to know that life is fleeting and your health is not a given, and to really value your health and to be as healthy as possible. I should mention that I had no idea that nutrition had a connection with cancer at the time. I had no concept of that. I had no idea, and I didn't transition into a whole food plant-based diet until 10 years after I had gone through all of my cancer journey and my cancer experience. So those two things are not really connected. The only way that they are connected is in that I had been cancer free for 10 years and I had my newborn son at home, and those two things kind of got my brain going into, okay, how do I consider longevity and health and modeling good behaviors for my son? And that kind of got the ball rolling with finding a whole food plant-based diet. But otherwise, I had no idea about plant-based nutrition when I was going through my cancer journey. Having cancer gave me a really different perspective on life, and I would never wish cancer on anyone, and I certainly wish that I never had to go through it. But at the same time, it did change me, and I don't know if it changed me for the better necessarily, but it definitely changed my perspective, and over time made me value my health. And once I recognized that I could actually reduce my cancer risk and that I did have some kind of control over it and felt empowered to make some changes and actually influence my possible future disease risk, then I really took that with both hands and held on. And that's why I eat a whole food plant-based diet and live a healthy lifestyle, and I get my body moving, and I try to encourage others to do the same, because we have more control than we think. And who knows what would have happened if I made the switch to a plant-based diet sooner, whether I would never have had cancer or whether it would have been a different circumstance. Who knows? You can still get cancer. It doesn't completely eliminate your risk by, eating a healthy diet and living a healthy lifestyle. But I know that now what I'm doing is reducing my risk and is setting my son up for reduced risk, and Chris has reduced risk, and so I can feel good knowing that, and knowing that I'm sharing this information and sharing how I got healthy and turned things around after dealing with several health issues over the years. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful in some way, or comforting, or relatable. Thank you so much for watching through, for watching ads, and for being here on the channel. We recently reached 10,000 subscribers, and I'm thrilled about that. So excited. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're having an amazing day, and even if you're not having an amazing day today, tomorrow might be a better day. There are better days ahead, and there's always hope. So I'm wishing you all the best, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.